Hello there. Good evening. Tonight we're going to continue the conversation of great importance, which is COVID 19, and my ever changing opinions on the subject. Well, I've done a little bit of studying, my whole 5 minutes that I like to do, because just because you read it on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Um, I challenge people to think for themselves. Okay. First of all, I want to state that in British Columbia, we have gotten it fairly light, not just in comparison to the rest of the world, but also in comparison to lots of other parts of Canada. Ontario in particular, Quebec in particular. They've gotten it far worse than we have. And there may be reasons that are beyond the obvious ones, like poorer air quality, more densely populated cities. Those obviously play a factor, but I work on the theory that this is a biological weapons test. And Bonnie Henry, the public health officer for British Columbia, um, may have done other things other than researching for vaccinations for COVID 19 and also guiding the public into doing exactly what it is they're told, and in such a manner where people don't panic and they more or less do as they're told, without any heavy handed government practices. And I think there's some shady dealings as well. I think because this was a controlled weapons experiment, biological one, um, British Columbia was able to negotiate less severe terms of this horrible plague on humanity. And you may wonder, well, what political advantages does British Columbia have over, say, let's say, Ontario or Quebec, where historically wise and even present day, they are the powerhouses of Canada? Well, British Columbia is a huge port city. We bring in a lot of Chinese manufactured goods. We have a huge ethnic population of Hong Kong Canadians. And there was wiggle room for the British Columbian government to more or less douche the responsibility onto other people, which you can say is good for British Columbians, not so much other parts of Canada, because I believe this virus was completely negotiated, probably years, maybe even decades before it occurred. Um, okay, so you get your bird flu in 97. That occurred in Hong Kong. It was first discovered in 96. You get your swine flu in 2009 from presumably Mexico, but no one's really sure. And now we have COVID 19, which is widely believed to have come from China and probably did, although some sources state that it was originally from northern Italy. And that may be true, but the Chinese are still to blame. Now, let me explain that, because some people won't understand that. They'll go, well, Italy has such a high percentage of COVID 19 cases. If indeed this virus did come from northern Italy, how is that still China's fault? By any means necessary. Which means, on the global scale, um, the Chinese are well traversed in creating biological weapons. They've been constantly working on that as their main technological weapon against the world. Probably long since before the Japanese were there in World War II, and they've continued to do that ever since. So, in essence, they can blackmail the world into releasing a virus that has lesser consequences, less dramatic effects, um, and it doesn't really matter where the specimen biological test weapon came from, because the bigger one that the Chinese Communist Party has in their possession, they probably have many of them, forced the issue, and it was negotiated to just be smaller. So if that is true, it really doesn't matter where the virus originally came from. To be honest with you, I think it came from China. I think that maybe there was some genetic evidence of it in northern Italy at one point in time, and the Chinese were able to ascertain samples of that, and they mutated it into something else. That's also possible. Um, but yeah, there's far worse viruses that could plague humanity, and this is a decades-long problem. And it's a big tangled web of lies and deceit, and many people in the healthcare profession are just as oblivious as anyone else. They are told what they're told. They're told to be fearful of it because they're shown all this propaganda of how horrible it is, and yes, it is horrible. That they are out of touch. And they start being fearful of things that are not incorrect, but wrongly directed. And you'll notice that in particular areas, that COVID-19 is somehow out of control, or it's far worse than in others. And, it really was a rat race to see who felt the effects of COVID-19 far less than any other particular areas. It was calibrated with a big arbitrary government bodies deciding where this virus is going, whom it's going to affect, how many people it's going to infect, who gets the vaccination first, or the vaccine, I should say. And, some people in some countries and some provinces got off lighter than others. And, it was a wide spectrum, and each of those places affected by this virus received it differently, based on their ability to react to it quickly enough, to control their populace, to understand it, and obey the rules, laws associated with this virus in an orderly manner. And, it's a big, complicated set of lies. Because you look at it from a British Columbian perspective, okay, or an Ontario perspective. We're not a million miles apart. Ontario is not that far away. And how is it that that virus didn't hitch a ride from Ontario to British Columbia, before Doug Ford really started cracking down and putting in draconian laws of, isolation and lockdown? Yeah, the math doesn't seem to make sense. Viruses don't have a central nervous system. they don't have independent thought. They just do. And if it's introduced into an environment, it will spread, propagate itself within its immediate host. And it has done that a little bit in British Columbia, but as I said, in comparison to other parts of Canada and other parts of the world, relatively not so much. And is that because people are behaving better over here? Is it because of weather conditions? Is it because of other things? I think those are possibilities, but I think the main thing is that our government body over here negotiated some sort of agreement where we received the virus at a far lower rate. There are many things that factors are here, but this is nothing new. It seems to me that there'll most certainly be a virus, no matter what, coming again, at least in the next 10 years, if it follows the same trajectory as before. Because it's probably no secret in the Western powers that none of the Western powers particularly like dealing with China because, there are many reasons. You name your reason, there's a reason. And that's been known for decades. And, each time a leader stands up against China, they amplify their threat of a virus, which may lead to a weaker version of that virus being released, or a weaker, different type of virus being released, like bird flu, like swine flu, like COVID-19, because they have bigger ones that would cause mass devastation. We're not seeing dead bodies in the street. We're not seeing people turn into zombies. We're not seeing people glow neon green. Those type of biological weapons exist. And COVID-19, as horrible as it is nowhere near as horrible as those things. So, the more the West stands up to China, because of our intertwined business relations, not to mention Earth is a very small planet, relatively speaking. What Barney Gumble said in one Simpsons episode, there should be one planet for the French and one planet for the Chinese, and then we'll all be happy. And you know what? He wasn't actually that wrong. But, Earth is not a very big planet, so there's a lot of ways that we can easily cause each other headaches. And this virus floating around is definitely one, and it is highly political size. You know what I mean? The politics of it have definitely played huge factors in what's been going on in the world. As I said, Donald Trump was blamed for COVID-19 as a very ignorant statement. We're dealing with the Chinese Communist Party, who's been wanting to give us viruses for decades. Probably even longer than that, probably hundreds of years. Just not able to do it. And now, these things are starting to come more and more to light when other problems are becoming more and more real. You can't ignore what goes on in that part of the world and what their mad ambition is of what the West means to them. Do you think the Chinese Communist Party wants to rule a disease-ridden backwater with radioactive toxic lakes and basically all the horrible things they have to do to maintain their manufacturing industries? No, they want nice, clean, agricultural rich areas, like North America. Probably like South America too, because there's some parts of it that are still fine, relatively speaking. Um, and it's just, for the last 30, 40 years, the world's been watching them because they have the know how to take over the world. They don't have the means, but they have the know how. And beforehand, the West just thought, oh, we can give them enough resources to manufacture our goods. Nothing bad will happen to it. Look at how pathetic their technology is compared to the West. And in the last 2 decades or so, the advancements are just exponentially improving. That don't count for squat, though, if they do not have the resources to continue the push. They can, invent the most sophisticated supercomputer, but if they can only build one of the friggin' thing, then it doesn't do enough for it to be a significant global problem. And I believe Donald Trump's tariffs were not just the Americans demanding money, not just them depriving the Chinese of money, but also depriving them of resources, which is a type of money. I had read a story that those famous islands the Chinese erected in the South China Sea are in fact sinking, and that is not actually surprising because those are rough seas, for one thing, and that's expensive to maintain anyway. Water is always eroding the land, and if you create something that's essentially, a giant, sand pit, the sea's going to take it back unless you constantly pour resource into it. And that's merely for propaganda to say, well, we'll just create our own islands and we don't need Taiwan, blah, blah, blah. We're self-sufficient and all this other stuff. And it's just like, well, actually, you need a lot of work to do that. So if you're deprived of resources to do other things, you're going to have to cut some branches off that tree and stop doing non-essentials. Not that I don't think the Taiwanese don't have ballistic missiles that could eradicate those islands anyway, and that's part of the propaganda thing. I mean, that would start off a whole chain of events where it would be World War III, so there has to be a level of control where people cannot do things like that. But each country is inching, and they're terribly offensive things to the other nations of the world. Like, I mean, when the Chinese send their fishing boats over to other parts, particularly in Latin and South America, to steal all their fish, that's a very offensive thing that they do. And the thing is, their navies could sink a good number of those fishing ships, if not all of them, if they wanted to. But then that would start a chain reaction where the Chinese would have the pretext to break treaties and send in their navy past international waters. I mean, there could also be problems of understanding the local wildlife in the sense of the fish population and where it's going to be at a particular time. It's like when the Americans grab up the sockeye salmon from Alaska that they know damn well is coming through Canada or is on its way to Canada, but they snatch it up in American waters, and then therefore it's American sockeye salmon. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. So, not necessarily does the Chinese Communist Party, and their fishing boats have to enter South American or Central America, their international waters. They don't necessarily have to do that. They just have to understand where the fish are going to be. I mean, if they do, which they did do with the Galapagos Islands, where they did make a big presence there, that's for propaganda and for show, showing that look what we just did, the West doesn't like it, and they couldn't do anything to stop us. And, that is a slap in the face to the West. I mean, don't get me wrong, the West slaps China in the face all the time, just in different ways. I mean, like I said, best agricultural lands in the world. as opposed to essentially a big giant slum uh, beyond all redemption. So, yeah, that's definitely some food for thought there. Because there will come again another leader that has to stand up to China, because everybody knows that they just want to keep pushing it until they're right on our doorstep and they push us out of the way of being the world powers. And a lot of people go, well, the West shouldn't be the world powers. And it's like, well, fuck you. Yeah, and there are people out there who think, well, with the kinds of things that the West can do to China, they can never fully, they can never conquer the world, because there's just so many things that could happen that would stop them. And, the West had an arrogant opinion that they would never be able to build anything that would be matching of Western technology, but they have done, and they have outwitted the West in many regards. Not the important ones, but a significant amount of ones. And it is a problem that can't be ignored. And again, it's China's just going to keep pushing it forward, keep pushing the envelope again, until someone in the ranks of the Western powers, it doesn't have to be an American president, although I think it should be, but anyway, will rise up yet again, hopefully soon, hopefully Donald Trump in January, to say, no, we're not playing this game with China anymore, because the risk of losing this for the immediate false pretense and comfort of a lasting peace with China is so obscure that it just can't be taken seriously. And looking the other way to this heinous crime that the Chinese Communist Party has unleashed on the world, whether it was their virus or not, or they simply said, you release a virus, these are the terms, and we won't release our worst virus, or one that's worse than this one, upon the West, which they could do through various methods, air currents, through commercial goods, anything. Traders, we got plenty of those. Plenty of people running around doing things. You can't stop them, can't watch them 24 hours a day. I mean, their inner circles can, but will they tell the truth about where they're going and what they're doing? Probably not. So that's what it boils down to. The West, the problem with the West is it's not a unified entity. And there are some in the West that understand this problem, but they have wrong ideas on what a unified entity should look like. With the current direction that it seems to be going in, hell no. Yeah, we still got a lot of countries that are still running around doing things, and you can't predict everything someone's gonna do. And sometimes when there's a national school of some sorts, we'll call it, with a bunch of punk nations running around doing their own thing, someone's gonna do something that the rest of them are gonna go, ooh, they shouldn't have done that, but they'll do it anyway. I mean, the Icelandics, they boot China out of a business opportunity to build a golf course in Iceland. They said no to them. The rest of the world, the rest of the Western world probably went, I don't know about that. I don't think it's a good idea. And it was just so that they could get into the Arctic Circle, the Arctic Council, because they want on they want their 2 cents in every big decision that's made on this planet, and it's like, nope, you're not in the northern hemisphere, so fuck off. Yeah, but they don't take answers like that very well. In fact, they hold grudges about them. In fact, 100 years from now, they'll still have the same grudges. In fact, even if they got exactly what they wanted, but we resisted having their ability to do that, they'd still hold a grudge 100 years later about that. Can you believe these people? They just don't give up. And they're not satisfied until they take every single thing, because they're so mad that they're at a disadvantage, and they feel that they're so much more clever and intelligent, and they work much harder than we do, that they should have a better place in the world, and they don't. And in us having that and them not, we're mocking them anyway. So you can, have the Mao Zedong pin that they have. You could, wear those stupid clothes that they wear that stupid cone hat on your head like they do. And by the way, I am aware that this is a Russian hat. It was made in Belarus, in case anyone wants to know. But that's completely different. And you know what I mean. You can suck up to the Chinese as much as you possibly can given your social status, but that will not change their overall opinion of people from the West. And I'm not talking about the peasants or, even the working class or any of those sort of things. I'm talking about the political and military elite of China. They will not change your opinion, not change their opinions of you, no matter what. They have their set of ideological beliefs, and not even our most brilliant intellectuals are going to change their minds. And why should they even bother? Cut right to the chase. Deal with the problem. Don't ignore it. Don't pretend, we'll pretend everything's great. Yeah, I'm seeing YouTube videos pop up saying, 2021 is going to be a great year. Yay, 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 yay. I don't like the idea of living in a false reality where we're told everything's great and we're supposed to ignore everything that went wrong and things that are still presently going wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a doomer or a miserable person. But at the same time, I got this thing about bubbly personalities. I don't feel like being injected with happiness and going la-di-da-di-da-di-da, everything's fine, when it's not. I also don't like being told what to think. I got a thing about that. It's, I don't know what it is. It's a thing. I don't like to be told what to think. I could be talked into perhaps believing in certain things, I suppose, but I don't like it when someone says you have to think this, because then that's bullshit. Anyway, I'm gonna trail this off. Much more to discuss, and this is far from over. So anyway, I'll talk to you people later. Have a good one.